scheduler's memory or in its state.
So this is recording already. Whenever you guys end, you can just stop.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Paul.
Not a problem. You guys have fun.
Okay. Yeah, I think let's get started. I think we have a bunch of items that we want to discuss. I want to discuss 1.5 release planning. So do we have a release manager for 1.5 already, or we need to have one volunteer for 1.5? And what's the target date? I feel like we are not very diligent on setting a release date and the release on time, things like this. And I think we should improve that. And I think one way to improve that is we set up early expectation, like when we're gonna release that, when we're gonna do the cut, things like that. And also, I think last time I discussed with Node that how do you block a release? I think we got a lot of turn back and forth during the release voting process, where someone say, hey, this is blocked, and then someone argue like, hey, this is not a blocker. I think we have a better way to manage that. I think one way to do that I would suggest is we have a kind of a retarget window. So basically, we leave 2 weeks or a month. You think 2 weeks is not enough for people to retarget their release? Hey, yeah. To retarget their releases, and if that window is closed, no ticket can be retargeted. I'm not sure what you guys think about that. And we can release planning really early, so that we can have an on-time release rather than always waiting for the last minute to do the release.
You're breaking up quite a bit. I'm not sure on your end or our end.
Oh, okay. Hold on, let me do one more thing. Hello.
Hello.
Is it better?
Keep talking.
Okay.
I think the main thing I didn't hear, G, was what criteria you were proposing for blocking a release.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time that the last time I had a chat with Vinod when say, hey, I want to retarget this to 1.4, but Vinod believed that it's not a blocker for 1.4. So I think we should set up some process, for example, retargeting window is something that we set up so that we have a rule for that. If you miss that window, you cannot retarget the ticket. You have 2 weeks window to retarget the ticket if you feel that's a blocker or it's a very important issue for you. But if you miss that window, I'm sorry, you cannot do that anymore. Things like this.
Yeah, I think we should first kind of agree what can be a blocker, even before saying what can be retargeted and what time frame. We should first agree on what are the things that can be a blocker for release. And in my view, that has to be a very minimal set of things that could ever block a release. For example, if it's a regression, that should be a blocker. If it's something that was introduced in that release, which basically is a regression. If it's a new feature, it should not be a blocker. If it's a security issue, it might be a blocker, but if it's existing, if it has existed always, whether it has to be done in this release or it can be next point release. To me, if it has already existed in previous releases, it should not be a blocker. If it's a regression from something that used to work and it suddenly doesn't work, that's the only thing that should be a blocker in my mind. And if there are any API changes that are mid-flight, and if we just release it, that might cause some issue in the future, maybe those are the things that should be blockers. But other than that, nothing else should be a blocker. Critical issues shouldn't be a blocker. New features should definitely not be a blocker.
So for critical issues, you would propose that we just get them into the next point release? Yeah.
Or, especially if it has been for one release, I don't know why it has to be that particular release that it has to go in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I guess what if there's a for a bug that applied to all the previous versions. So technically, it's not a regression, but it's severe enough that might bring down the entire cluster for a customer or for a given user. What should that be?
What case?
Like you have a bug, and that bug exists in all previous versions, and it's risky enough to leave that bug in production because it might just bring down the entire cluster. Should we make that a blocker for a given release or not?
I think, in my view, no. Like if it has existed in previous releases, it means it's been there for like 6 months. Like why can't it be there for 8 months? I guess that's what I would ask. Like,
I just like the fact of the risk like involved. Like maybe like it's not, maybe there's a bug that people don't notice. Like for example, some bug might result in data loss. That people might not be noticing that, or due to some other reasons, the race condition somehow it doesn't happen all the time, but it might happen. The consequence is severe.
yeah, but I think the fact is that that bug has always been there. It's just that we found out, and just because we found out doesn't mean it somehow has to be fixed right away. I mean,
I feel like the tension is that, like with what G's saying, this because if we don't treat the release as a forcing function to fix that issue, we might not actually fix it, right? Which is a separate problem, totally separate problem. But I feel like that's kind of been the reality a little bit, where releases have often ended up being a little bit of a forcing function to fix, which is bad because they come up right before the release rather than being.
I think what's happening, right? I mean, even like I agree, G, that's like the situation where you want to block a release, but what's happening right now is due to that, you're delaying that release for like 2 months.
Yeah, so that's the reason that I'm proposing some release targeting window thing.
But again, after that target window, if you found this bug, what would you do?
Yeah, that's true. So depends on the severity of that bug. I mean, it's like a people judgment. But yeah, I agree. Like we should have.
I would rather we do
Timely
like
release is more important. Yeah. Okay.
Out of ban, we always said patch release could be done out of schedule. Like it doesn't have to wait for a month. If it's something that's really important and we don't want to wait for a month, we don't do it for a week or 2 weeks. Let's do a patch release sooner. But
Okay. Sounds like if we solve the patch release time schedule, like we like stick to our timeline, 1 month release for patch release, then it should not be a problem. Yeah, that I agree. So maybe we should fix that problem and see how that goes. And then if that still didn't fix the issue, then we discuss what we should do next. For those significant bugs.
So I think it's probably a issue that would require a judgment on a case by case scenario. But I think there's a bottom line here, right? So if the next release if this is critical enough, you determine whether it can go into the next minor release instead of patch release. So because if you're saying, well, this can go into the next patch release when you haven't even released the current release, and this is critical enough, then we're kind of violating some ethic here, because what good it is if it's something that's severe enough you cannot even recommend people to use. If it's
but I think that's what. Ian, but that bug was already severe enough in the old release, and we recommended it. What's special about the current release that we don't want to recommend it?
I guess there's a question here to me, which is like, if that was known for a long time, we didn't fix it, like that's a process issue that we have where we don't actually focus on fixing severe bugs, and the release should not be a forcing function for that. There's a separate concern of like the bugs discovered right before the release. I think maybe that's the thing we're considering here.
Yeah, I think, but to me that's very arbitrary. Like we could discover that just after 1 day after release. What are you going to do?
I agree. I think if we were really diligent about fixing issues and we knew that it was going to make it into a patch release, then it wouldn't be as concerning to say, here's the release, there's some critical issues, least where they are, keep them in mind, and the patch releases start to fix some of those, right?
That's what we've been trying to do. I guess we've not been diligent, but we're calling out critical issues now in our releases. Like, what are the known critical issues? At least people have to know it, which is most important to me. But to me, like, just because you found something one day before versus 2 days later doesn't change the fact of the severity of the bug or the standard of the release. I feel like that's just arbitrary. Pointing
Just to chime in, I mean, whenever I've seen release process, generally the only blocker I would consider for release, and this goes to Vinod's argument, is if there is a regression, we should do we should treat it as a blocker. If it's not a regression, I mean, it shouldn't be treated as a blocker. That's it. It's that simple as that. And if something severe is found, we should release note it and inform everybody that we have this bug and people are working on it, and it'll come up in a patch release.
Yeah, I mean, regression, I think one other thing that I found where we have to probably block release was cases where someone was doing a new feature. It was doing some changes in how we checkpoint stuff where if it didn't fix it, like the upgrade would have been an issue down the line in the next release. I think backwards compatibility to me would probably be one of the things that where we would make it a blocker if it somehow breaks backwards compatibility. That is where I would say we might want to be a little more clear, because it's a new feature and it's experimental, but the way it's writing the state or whatever makes it so that it breaks backwards compatibility if you don't fix it, and it's writing it in a bad way. I mean, in that case, I would say maybe we can block it, but...
Does that not fit in your definition of a regression?
Well, I guess it's not a regression in the sense that that's a new feature.
Yeah, but like the upgrade support is maybe a feature or
like general upgrade.
A promise that we make.
General upgrade as a thing is breaking because of this new feature.
Yeah.
If you consider that as this one, then yes, it's a regression.
Mm-hmm.
I think in general, if it's not making it worse, I don't think it should be a blocker. I think that's
okay. I think that sounds fine. We shouldn't spend too much time. We have a bunch of agendas. So I think the action item is, I think as long as we stick to the current promised release cycle and schedule, like 1 month for each patch release and the 3 months or 2 months, I don't remember, for the minor release, I think that should be fine. Let's try that first. And then only block a release if it's a regression or maybe this is a security issue that's severe enough that we should block. Otherwise, anything else should not be blocking a release. And let's stick to the current schedule. I feel like the release is not sticking to the current schedule. I mean, for example, how much the point release. And we should do that. The release so that we can stick to a release schedule. That's something that I want to bring up here. Like, for example, when should we do 1.5? Is there a target date for 1.5? Should we start planning right now and start doing that in the last minute, and that will facilitate the release?
I think we should start the 1.5 right now.
Yeah. Okay. So I think like we have before we're doing that, I think like we have Tomic on the line that wants to talk about Mesosong ARM. I think sorry about that. I think I didn't see this note before I started the meeting, so I don't know. I don't realize this one is first. So Tomic, can you speak up for the Mesosong ARM topic?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So a little bit of introduction. At Mesosong, I talked with Advent Lani from Pact, and he's also running initiative Work on ARM, supported by ARM and Pact.
Hey, Vinod, Greg, can you guys just mute the mission control speaker? I think there's a lot of feedback from that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And ARM as a company is supporting open source project with CI infrastructure to building their projects on ARM. They provide quite powerful machines, and from my perspective, it's like a side project to make Mesos runnable as a whole, like master and agent on ARM. But I saw there's interest in a community for example, Verizon is using ARM servers. So I just want to propose running Mesos, like supporting ARM-based architecture for Mesos. So this required to get resources like ARM servers from Pact and plug it into Jenkins and started fixing bugs and making like proper support for ARM-based machines. So this is the story, and like my question is, who is the person responsible for this decision? Like, is there any interest in somebody want to shepherd this topic, or who do I need to talk to from Mesos or Apache community side to make it happen?
Yeah, so I think as far as I know that the folks from Verizon told me that they make that part, the Mesos on ARM working like several months ago. I'm not sure what's the current status. They made a lot of patches to fix some of the issues, mainly regarding upgrade level DB and like some like sick bus issues due to alignment. I think you mentioned those patches. I think those are landed already. So I'm not sure like I think one thing missing is the CI. So if we can get like a Jenkins CI for ARM for every single commit, so we will immediately notice that, oh, this commit breaks the ARM build, things like this. So that's something that I should definitely do. I'm not sure what's the kind of, what do you mean by official support?
Tomek, are you looking to contribute yourself? And are you looking for a shepherd that can help you get patches committed because you're going to be running this stuff on ARM? Or are you looking for other people to do this?
From my perspective, it's like building Mesos on ARM is currently I do not have access to like machines that could be delivered by Pact, like 96 cores. For me, it's like a side project to just build a Mesos cluster on Raspberry Pi, and that was what I proposed, like I think 2 years ago for Google Summer of Code. Unfortunately, it was not accepted, and now I can work on this and like provide the patches like I do before with level DB and some signals and kernel syscalls. Fortunately, it looks like this some of these patches also fixes problems for other architectures for guys from IBM. I thought the syscall issue and level DB was also, as I noted, S390X was fixed by this, and so I'm searching for a shepherd who will be like can give some time to review fixes, and was more important for me to get resources from Works on ARM initiative, like Apache Foundation, or I don't know, some committers need to commit that yes, Mesos project will participate in this program to get this hardware.
Yeah, I mean, so it sounds like you're. Go ahead, G.
I'm just curious, like which patch that hasn't landed that you need shepherding, or like.
The problem with patches that hasn't landed is that I haven't prepared them because I knew some issues that need to be solved, but currently when we try to compile Mesos on ARM, it's not compiling due to glog problems. I haven't investigated it much. I know that there is an issue with Mesos master where level DB comparator is assumes that we are running on Little Indian and ARM is based on Big Indian, and that's currently the main two problems that I'm aware of. but without hardware, like compiling methods on my machines, my machine in Docker with QEMU and stuff like this takes hours, and it's really it's really hard to just change something and wait 1 hour. It's like 90s or 80s when you send a patch and wait a whole night to get a test result.
Yeah, because I was under the impression that at the time the Verizon folks told me like months ago that they make that Mesos on ARM working. So I assume that most of the issue has been fixed, and I helped them upstream some of the patches that they need. Because I was under that impression, I don't realize that there's so many other issues that hasn't been fixed.
Yeah, Verizon guys are running only agents, and I successfully run Mesos agent with pre 1.0 version, but in the current master there are some dependencies that are not working. Yeah, and without continuous integration, we just can't assume that the latest release of Mesos is working on ARM too. That's the main problem.
Yeah, I don't think I think that the key is that we should have a CI machine if we want to support ARM moving forward, so that we know that, oh, my patch breaks the ARM and I need to fix that. Right now, like everyone is in the dark. Yeah, so that's kind of, I want to say, we should have an ARM machine. Ideally, like it should be a server machine, cannot be a Raspberry Pi, because otherwise it would be so slow to build Mesos, most likely. So, or we do cross-plane combination to set up that one.
So guys, so just a reminder, for the Mesos Beijing this year, there's two guys from ARM. They give a talk to running Mesos and Marathon, including the master and agents, on the ARM machine, which I just pasted the link in the Google Doc. So and from previously, we have heard a couple other use cases, people in community running Mesos on ARM, and does it sound reasonable to like start a like Mesos on ARM working group and then have these folks working together to discuss the right solution, and then to figure out like what do we still need it to merge into Mesos to support ARM, instead of like each of you guys doing the implement your own patches and then doing it privately.
I think working group might be.
Yeah, I agree, but I just want to see if what needs to be done, like from a bigger picture, because like creating working group, starting working on this, it's okay, but without Shepard and some the patches, it's like we can.
I can help ship patches if you have some.
So for the CI, instead of just waiting for an ARM machine, is it okay if we run an ARM on a QEMU emulator on Ubuntu and just do the Mesos compilation on a QEMU emulator? Would that work?
That's one way. It will be probably very slow though.
Sure, it'll be slow. But if we get a relatively powerful machine with QEMU, it might be able to do it relatively fast.
Yeah, I think, Thomas, I'll be very happy to review the patches. I think that's the idea for like Verizon folks, that they have those like ARM issues. But yeah, if you have any patches that you think that's gonna, well, if that touches the like container related stuff, then feel free to ping me. I'll be happy to shepherd those patches. And for the level DB, I used to remember the Verizon has a patch that we hasn't landed, but I thought like once we upgrade to 1.9, which we already did, that should solve the issue. But I don't realize there's still an issue there.
So regarding the CI, I think someone needs to donate our machine to the ASF Jenkins pool. And once someone donates it, we could have our stuff land on there and run it. That's what we tried to do with IBM, but actually they currently just decommissioned those for whatever reason. But that's the only way for us to have a CI is essentially, I mean, that's probably the most easiest way, is to have like someone, maybe the ARM company itself, donate a couple machines to ASF Jenkins pool, and then we can make sure we run our build on that machine as well, in addition to CentOS and Ubuntu and stuff that we currently run. And I can help you with, but I can't help you with finding a machine. But if you have a machine, I can help you to get in touch with the ASF infra folks and get that hooked up.
Okay, so one more time, does ASF has already ARM machines in their Jenkins pool, or it need to be donated?
Needs to be donated, yeah. I think they only have Linux machines, AMD64, they have some PPC machines, but that's, and a Mac OS machine and a couple Windows machines, and a FreeBSD machine, looks like.
Okay.
Yeah, we need someone to donate an ARM, 1 or 2 ARM boxes to ASF.
Okay, cool. So I will contact with guys from Pact and see if it's possible to just get some machines for whole.
And donating just means they could host it on their on-prem and just have the Jenkins CI keys installed on them. So it could be.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, that's what the Pact is.
Yeah. So if you want to get them in touch with me, I can talk to them about the process to donate it as well.
Okay, cool.
But I mean, having said all that, I think we should have someone on the committers who understands ARM and able to upstream it. And it looks like G is volunteering for that. Like we have.
Yeah. So most of the case is not like understanding like ARM architecture because it's hidden by the Linux kernel. So like there might be some like weird issues, but I would imagine most of the issues like upgrading our like dependency like level DB or some of the low level because it's essentially Linux. So most of the functionality should be similar. So I don't expect too many changes needed to make ARM work.
Okay.
Yeah, usually the problem are the like Indianness of the ARMs and
networking code might be a little, yeah. I think like the way you need to handle Indian, you should be very careful because ARM has different Indian than x86.
Okay, so I will contact with other guys and like probably start a working group and make some.
Yeah, if you have any patch, feel free to ping us. I think you can ping me or ping Gilbert or ping any of the committers, and they will properly forward. Or just ping us on like dev channel, and if we have time, we'll definitely look into that. I will be happy because I don't think it's too much work to make it work, and that there's some benefit of doing that.
Okay, so I will contact with the Pact and ask them about the CI solution too, and post some patches that I think I've got some small patches, but I need to check them once again.
Sounds good. Thanks. Thank you, Tommy.
Okay.
Okay, so we have 27 minutes left. Ben, are you online?
Yep. Can you guys hear me?
It's breaking up a little bit.
We can't hear you, Ben.
Okay, is that better? What about now?
Keep talking.
Yeah, it's better.
G, have you already covered 1.4 release and 1.5 release stuff?
Do you want me to finish that first? I think I think we haven't finished the 1.5 release yet.
Okay, yeah. Well, why don't you talk through that, and I'll just use the last 20 minutes.
Okay, yeah. So okay, let's do the release planning. So 1.5 release. So Vinod and Ben, do we have a release manager for 1.5 already?
No.
Okay, so is there any new committer that wants to volunteer for 1.5 release management?
Let me see the round robin who did it last.
What's the timeline? Sorry if we.
Probably a couple months from. My ideal timeline was is ideally like yesterday.
Okay.
No. So hold on. So 1.4 is September, right? So 1.5 is
Well, we were counting from RC1 date, technically, and
Okay.
that took more than 2 months to get from RC1 to actual release. So, but yeah, we can start 2 months from our release date.
I think we should set a date right now. Like, I think it's okay that this time we don't stick to the strict timeline right now, but we should set a date right now. Like, we plan early. Like, say, hey, let's say
I'd
end
say
of November is
December. Yeah.
RE4.
Yeah, I would say end of November. Maybe we should have one more release before the end of the year. I feel like would be nice.
Yeah, I would say like I will vote for like end of November, like which is like kind of 2 months from now.
Yeah.
So if no volunteer, I would volunteer to do that as a new committee.
Are you new? Oh, you've never released so far?
Yeah, I did not release before.
Okay, that would be great. And maybe someone can shadow you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gilbert, I can shadow you. Given that 1.5 is gonna be like the storage stuff, so I can shadow you on this.
Okay. Thanks, G.
Great, thanks. I'll mark you release manager then. 1.5 here.
Okay, so another thing I want to bring up is like, okay, so Gilbert, can you take a note, say, hey, we're gonna target for end of November, 1.5.
Yes.
Yeah, just mention that. Okay, so another thing I want to bring up for release is like blog posts. I feel like Meso's blog post is kind of every time we release something compared to other container orchestrators, that our release blog is not that interesting, not that exciting. How do we improve that? Like, I want to propose something. One thing is like maybe like every time in each release, if there's a major feature being written, let's start a blog post Google Doc first, like very early, and then people start filling those information into that blog post about the new features, exciting new features, rather than asking release managers to do all these release blog posts, which he might not have any context for. Like kind of distribute the workload and then have some person do the editing in the end to make it coherent. I'm not sure what do you guys think. I feel like just like compared to some other container orchestrators blog posts, our release blog post is like not great.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we chatted in the community working group was the newsletter stuff that we're going to publish once a quarter or something like that, or once a month, whatever it was, as forcing function to kind of talk about some of the new stuff happening in the project and some of the current stuff that's in progress and stuff like that. And I think the first edition hasn't come out yet, but that's one of the things that we thought they would publish on the blog is the newsletter kind of thing. It's slightly different than a featured blog post, more about work in progress kind of thing and stuff like that. So that's one thing we could do in the blogs section. But yeah, release blog posts would definitely be useful. People never seem to have time for that stuff. I mean,
yeah.
Forget about blog posts. People don't have time to write user docs. So I would, if you're practicing anything, I would prioritize writing user docs and then blog posts. Like we are not even writing user docs right now for big features. It's very limited user docs. I would prioritize that, writing that as part of big features, even before talking about blog posts.
So this is related to the Dockathon we plan to do.
I mean, we're going to do a catch up via Dockathon, but ideally that should be part of the process itself, that whenever we ship features, we write user docs. That's part of the epic. One of the ticket items in the epic should be user docs.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, we should write them as we.
Also, I have a question.
I like. Oh, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I like G's idea. We should be writing docs along the way and we could start writing blog posts along the way. If we have great docs written, the blog post is going to be so much simpler to write.
Right. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think like that's something we should do. I think like I've heard like I work with Gilbert take initiative for the 1.5 release blog post. I will probably like ping you guys on any new features that you get in 1.5 release, and then we start a blog post early. So that's the reason I want to start this discussion early, like regarding releases. And I probably start a doc right now and asking people to fill in the blog post where they'll go. And I mean, some of the content of the blog post, as Ben mentioned, like can be copied from doc. That should be fine. But we should start early rather than just jam into the end of the release on like the last day of the release, because it's going to be so much burden to write that. But if we start early, it should be easier, I would say.
So one quick question for previous Mesos releases. So apart from the blog post, does Apache has some regular like marketing pipeline to like propagate the Mesos release news? For example, from Twitter or some other Apache account. Do we have some regular way to notify user for latest releases?
Sorry.
What? So I repeat again. So the question is about like, does Apache help the project to propagate the news about each releases?
I think Apache has ASF, has a blog planet or whatever, where if you write a blog post and we want them to kind of market it, we can tell them and they probably link it in their central blog.
So what's the process? Like, is that creating a ticket somewhere or like send an email to someone?
Yeah, I think it's probably just sending email to, I don't know, press set or something like that. We can find that out, but I think they'll be more than happy to market it. If we write some blog and we'll ask them to put it in their channels, they will be happy to do it.
Okay, I see. Got it. Makes sense. Okay, I'll probably do that as part of a 1.5, because I think like one thing we don't do really well previously is like marketing ourselves. Yeah, we probably should do that better.
And I think we should standardize the release process. Every time we release a new version, we have Apache to do their best to help us to do the marketing, to notify the Mesos user, like, oh, we have the new release, and this is other features we have, and like, so it can improve the situation. Like right now, maybe many other Mesos users, they are still using like 0.28, 0.27, so we can like help them to upgrade, which will address some of the bug fix, and then have them to try out the new feature.
Doing more marketing, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Should I
yeah, yeah, you should start.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. So G, can you stop sharing your screen so I can share mine?
It's not me, Gilbert. Can you stop sharing your screen?
It was me. I stopped.
Oh, okay.
All right, you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So two files. First is the Apache Mesos Docathon. Start adding your ideas, please. So yeah, we're gonna do the Docathon next Thursday, and I'll send out some more emails and details. But got ideas, start filling them in. Questions, let me know. Looking forward. Should be good. Okay, and then the other agenda item was to talk through the current planning format status. Since I'm on my phone, yeah, you guys still hear me? Just double checking.
You're breaking up, Ben.
Hello, hello. Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, but it's pretty bad.
Okay, give me 20 seconds. Let me see if I can find. Okay, can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Right. Way to go, Zoom. I just totally switched Wi-Fi.
We can't hear you.
Okay, I wasn't talking. Can you hear me now?
Oh, okay.
Okay, great. Right, so the other thing I wanted to talk through was the playing format. So we've talked about this a bunch, and I would really love to see us do this. But there's just a bunch of things to talk through. So I tried to put together, I guess, a sort of playing format, state of the art, where we're at today. And then we'll just talk through this in the last 15 minutes, and I'll try to take notes, and other people can take notes or add comments in the doc, and see where we want to go. So we'll start. So basically, I'll begin with probably one of the potentially contentious one, and see what folks think. So there's two things we can set. We can set an indent width, and we can also set a continuation indent width. So today in Mesos, we follow basically the Google style, which is indent width is 2, and continuation indent width is also 2, except for functions and function calls. So there's no way to do that with playing format. So we have a choice. We can either set continuation indent width to be 4, in which case we'll get this 4-space indent here and 2-space indent here. However, we'll also get 4-space indents other places, which I'll show you in a second. So the main reasons why to do the continuation, sorry, the 4-space here, I'm guessing since I didn't come up with it, it was part of the Google style guide. But the main difference, I think, was to differentiate the space here effectively versus the space that in the continuation here. Probably because they do that. Did everyone follow that when I just did?
Yeah.
So, so it's less of an issue for us. However, because they probably did it because they do that, my guess is that it could possibly be an issue when it comes to lambdas, since we write lambdas the other way. So here's what it looks like when you have continuation width 4, space 2, with something like a lambda, or a lambda with a bunch of captures as well as a bunch of parameters. But this is where some of the weirdness comes when you have continuation width 4 in other places. Sorry, I'm just pausing for a sec. So the first thing that you start to get is the continuation after an assignment means rather than +2 here, you're going to get a +4. The other place you get it is someplace like this, where the continuation of the less than when you by 4. Here's another quirky one when you have a super long line and you have a variable name afterwards that will now be indented by 4 instead of 2. Here's another one when you have something like a binary operator, the indent. Actually, this is kind of wrong. It should be that. The indents would be changed like that. Here's another funky, I don't know, funky, but here's another ramification of this change.
rather than +2 for the dots, you start to get +4s. So the dot bends and all those things would be in by 4 instead of in by 2. Now, if, however, we did it the other way around, if we made the continuation be 2, then pretty much we'd be changing a lot of spots in our code where all the functions would, instead of having 4 space indent here, we need 2. Okay, so just since I don't have a ton of time, I'm not actually going. I would like to get through them all, and then we can come back with discussions. Please leave comments directly in the doc with thoughts and perspectives. Okay. All right. So the next one is break before ternary operators. So so basically, the idea here is that what this will try to do is put all question marks on new lines if it doesn't fit on a single line. The crux with Klein format is, first and foremost, it always tries to fit things on single lines, and when it can't fit things on single lines, then it tries to actually do some kind of breaking. So if you could fit the entire ternary on a single line, then it would do that. Otherwise, what this is saying is where you'd actually want to break. And so you start to get, in a lot of circumstances, it does what you would expect. Let me actually copy in. One where it does what you'd expect. So here is an example where it's kind of doing what you want. Folks see that? So
Yeah.
we basically change it from the question mark and the colon being afterwards. It changed it to the question mark and the colon on the new line, like that. But you also end up getting some funky stuff like this, where basically it always tries to align the question mark and the colon. It's aligning them here, and it always aligns them there. And so, so sometimes you just have this. Now, I've been trying to tweak it to see if I can get it to do like I don't love this one. This is where it actually has been like, oh, I'm gonna try this a different way. So there's that one. Okay. Okay, let's keep going. Break constructor initializers before comma. So this one is an interesting work where basically, because, like I said earlier, Klein format always tries to fit things on single lines if it can. It'll do something where it changes the current formatting to a formatting where everything fits in the same way. And in all other circumstances, with these two declarations you can give to Klein format, it does what you want, where it actually makes them be 1 per line, which is nice, but in circumstances where it can basically flatten it down to a single line, it does that. So there's no way to basically say, always do 1 per line if we want to. And a small tweak or quirk I'll say as well, it opens up the functions like this versus ending them like that. It's super minor, but just wanted to mention it. You can see it a bunch of places. Okay, all right, so now we'll get to calls. So in the latest, sorry, not the latest, in the version of Klein format I'm using, which is from LVM 4.0, you can actually get pretty close to what we do with our calls. So the order of preference looks something like this. If it's all on the same line, it'll try to do that. If, however, it can get everything on the second line, then it will try that next. And finally, when that doesn't fit, it will go to this format we have. Note that it'll never do this one anymore, which is where it actually has the thing on the first line and then more stuff. So there is interesting consequences of that, where you'll have things like looks like I forgot to copy that one in. Pull that one in. You'll have things like this. You guys see that? you have stuff like that, where even for short function names, everything will start fresh. Again, rather than passing judgment on any of this stuff just yet, let's talk through it. Come back. Okay, so yeah, so dispatches. First order of preference will be you can fit all on the same line, it will do it, and then it'll do that. Now, one thing I'll mention that is that the way that this gets applied, especially with when there's assignments, can get a little funky. Like it'll take code where somebody say has explicitly already wrapped it like this, and it'll move it to all be on the same line. Because again, line formats wants to try to get stuff on the same line as much as possible, even though technically this is 2 lines. Whereas in other places, what it will fall back on a place where it pulls the function call argument off. So it's a little bit inconsistent in that way, which is in some cases, I mean, it's not inconsistent from its perspective, but from our perspective, you'll have both. Like if you wrote the code this way because somebody saw it in the code base, you would reformat it this way. Whereas if you needed those circumstances, you would need to actually format it this way. So it's just the arguments to fit on the second. And the only reason why I think that's slightly interesting is because you'll have places in the code where it looks, where like you just kind of have to think through, okay, why did this one put it on the same line, but this one do it this way? Oh, it's because that doesn't actually fit. So again, it follows all the same conventions of the calls that I talked about over here. First and foremost, it tries to do this, then it tries to do this, then it tries to do this. It's just that it does it first by putting everything on a new line, and then by breaking it across lines. Does that make sense? Okay, I'll assume that's right. Now, there's a new thing in LVM 6 or maybe LVM 5 called penalty break assignments, which it's possible that we'll be able to, using this, force if we wanted this instead of this. But I'm not sure. There's one weirdness here when it comes to the calls, which is aggregate initialization, which it doesn't treat as a call. It changes all the code from what would be this, which is what you'd expect if this was, say, a constructor call instead of aggregate initialization, to this. And my guess is just because claim format is not up to it's not up yet to realizing that it wants to treat that based on the function call as well. Make sense? Yes, people can still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, moving on. So one really minor one to mention is just allow short functions on a single line. I just wanted to mention it because, well, I just wanted to mention it because of the comments. All right, next is the dot thens, the dot on any's, the dot on array. So this is an interesting one where I don't really think there's anything we can really do. But basically, when people have done explicit formatting where they've added the dot on any's, say on the next line to make this clear, like do this and then on any do this, it's going to try to pull things up again as much as possible onto a single line claim format. So here we've got the on any at the same line with a different. So you end up getting, say, here's another example down here. Examples, but you end up getting a lot of the dot thens being on the same line. Oh, yeah, so here's an example of dot then, same line, dot then being on the same line. So what's interesting is when you do chain, it's actually smart about chaining. So even if you could have fit some of these dot thens on a single line here, it'll still do the chaining. Now, if it can fit that first lambda and everything all on the same line, it'll do it like this. If, however, you put anything in the body of this lambda, then it'll also chain the first one, which I think is it being trying to be pretty smart, because it's recognizing that there's other chaining down here, so it'll do that. If you don't chain and you still can't fit the first lambda all on the same line, then this is kind of how it falls down. it says, okay, well, it'll still try to get something all together on one line, which is this lambda. So it can do that. It can get this whole thing on one line, so we'll do that. Now, though, when you can't fit this whole lambda on a single line, then it breaks down and it breaks the lambda across, starting with the breaks. It's the next time, because I could fit everything on the same line. It's not true all here. Okay, makes sense? Okay, and then the last one, which kind of threw me for a bit of a loop, I wasn't expecting this one, is it lines up the dots. So when we have something like this, where we're doing, like let's say that was a dot instead, rather than doing the continuation indent with here, like we saw, right here, where I showed you how it does the +4 for the dots to continue. This basically, what they do is on the other side of an assignment, it does the +4 from the assignment point. So the dots are way over here. It kind of tries to group this, the dots are kind of with this instead of with the entire assignment expression. Does that make sense? The dots are way far moved over because it's kind of grouping them with this. Mm-hmm. So I shouldn't say it lines it up with the other arrow, it's just +4 from here. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. And then here's some spots where you can kind of get to some slight inconsistencies, which again, from my format's perspective, not an inconsistency. It's more just following its rules. But places where, say, somebody would have wrapped it like this explicitly, it will change the wrapping here. Now, it doesn't do this everywhere. Again, as I showed you, there's some places where it actually is keeping the wrapping the way somebody originally did it. Like right here, it's actually keeping this this wrapping here versus putting a little bit and then a little bit. There's some. Honestly, there's some LaTeX jaggedness score that it's actually calculating to decide if it pulls it down or if it doesn't pull it down. And I haven't dug in, or as much as Park, I think, dug in to understand exactly that. But that does end up causing some slight inconsistencies where someone might do it this way. You'll have both in the code. You'll have both this way as well as you'll have this way. And it's sort of, you just kind of got to deal with it, that it'll choose and decide how it actually wants to wrap that. So again, places where it's doing it this way, it'll tweak it this way. And obviously in the code base, we have both as well, but unfortunately, rather than the system only doing it one way, which we would have liked, it's still going to be doing both ways. All right, and then the other place where where we might have done explicit formatting and it's now doing some reformatting is things like this, where we might have chosen to break up two calls here. Again, it's going to try to fit as many things as one line as it can. And so it's going to pull it in. This one's not actually as bad as I think when someone's trying to do something like this, where they're trying to say something like, what we have is a numerator and a denominator. And here's the numerator and here's the denominator. And it's clear to see, it'll again try to pull things up as much as a single line as it possibly can. Okay. All right, and then here's some of the unexpected things that I just would not have expected at all. I don't see very much, but applying format occasionally does. Things like this, where, again, you have something in the code base that it's actually changing a lot of things too. You'll actually see applying format change a lot of things, the return type, function name, break, +4 parameters, and it'll change it to return type, and then pull everything onto a single line here. I think it's unclear exactly what's going on there, but I think it has a positive score of pulling all the things onto a line here, and it's greater than the positive score of breaking out the return type. So you get a little bit of inconsistencies there. You might see this a bunch of places, but then again, it's not inconsistent from the format perspective. but it's just in the code base. You'll see both of them, and that could confuse some folks. But everyone can, of course, just run Clang. So here's another example. And then two more that I'll mention, and then I'm done. This one, I'm surprised that I can't fix this. I feel like I'm just using the tool incorrectly, but I can't seem to be able to keep double spaces between all top level functions. So Clang format's removing one of the spaces between all the top level functions. And then the other one is when we've explicitly laid out ifs, where we have condition, and then next condition, and then next condition, and then next condition, and we've broken those out across each of the lines. It tries to pull up as many conditions into a single line as possible, and basically break stuff down so we get as many conditions onto the tool as possible.
Hey Ben, we're over time. By the way.
Yep, we're
Okay.
over time.
Just making sure.
That was the last one. So what I'd love to do is I'd love to just hear from folks about what right now I just wanted to start this discussion, and please comment in the doc, and I guess we'll comment again. But I'd like us to move to Clang format, so if folks have opinions about things that they have opinions about how we should have Clang format do that, please make comments in the doc, and we'll go from there. All right.
Okay. Sorry, I know we are over time. I think the action item is comment on the doc.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm happy to chat a little bit longer if people want to chat for a little bit.
Yeah, I think to me it's like, let's just do it. Like, no matter what the format we choose, let's just do it. I mean, automation is more important than everything else.
Yeah, so that's why I'd just love to see some folks comment in the doc, because there's a few things we might be able to tweak, but I agree with you. I want to get it turned on.
Is it possible to turn it on now, and any diffs you make need the new format, but we don't have to basically commit changes to all the files?
Yeah.
Or...
So what I was thinking, the protocol I was thinking is that we could start using it, and if people, so the idea is that if they start to work on a file, my suggestion is they run Clang format on the file. Their first patch in the review chain is just the Clang format, and then they work off of that. And so that way, we'll slowly over time actually get this stuff in. And there's a great feature, I'm sure you've all have seen it as well in GitHub now, where you can click the little, like see the change before this. Like when you do blame, you can click a little button which will take you to the change before a change. So that's a super nice feature. So if people are like see a commit which is like reformatting, then they can just click the button and they can see whatever change happened on that line.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. Yeah.
So Ben, is it possible to run it on just the diff that you make?
I'm sorry, can you ask the question again?
Is it possible to just run it on the diff that you make?
Possible to run what?
Clang format, or does it need to run on the whole file?
Oh, I mean, you would. So it is possible that it only runs on the diff from the if you set up your editor to basically be doing, I think running Clang format for the code that you're writing, but I don't know. I actually don't know the answer to that.
Well, I'm just bringing it up because I assume we could integrate it with the tooling, much like we do with our other C++ style check thing. And then, you know, because the main concern here is that people writing code know how to format it, right? Or is there a concern with the existing code?
Well, I mean, ultimately, I think we want to get to that if we were to run Clang format across the entire code base, we'd get no diffs.
Yeah.
So it feels like the sooner that we get files Clang formatized, the better.
Diff breaks.
But I also agree with you. I agree with the sentiment that that because people are going to be running Clang format now, they shouldn't worry about looking around at how other code is formatted because it's just formatted for them. So that's not as much of an issue. So if there's a way of just doing it with the new code right now, I think that's something.
Yeah, I guess I was just concerned that that approach you mentioned where your first patch changes the file. I don't know if we're going to be successful in getting the whole project switched over that way. I don't know if people are going to...
What's the concern?
I don't know if people will remember, and I don't know if we'll end up touching all the files over a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, I was, the way I was thinking of it is if you're a shepherd and you get a patch, you basically just say to somebody, hey, have you run Clang format on this? And if they say no, you say, hey, do that and pull that to the beginning of your chain.
Remember, I think we can probably update the review bot to
me, it's the automatic boot, the tooling in the project that gets automatically generated should tell people if they're violating the Clang format stuff. And if you want to make that on a file basis, then that could force them to change the file, but it's kind of heavyweight for new contributors and stuff to have to do that maybe.
do it as
or we can just do it one shot.
Yeah, we could just do it for them or something.
Let's just pick one day, maybe tomorrow. Let's just do that.
like the whole
I feel like we
project.
should do that like ASAP. I don't think we should spend time on style issue anymore on review board.
Radical.
Well, I mean, one thing that people like Go is like you don't have to deal with and worry about style issues, which is a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I guess that's why I was asking whether we need to change the whole project since they don't have to think about it if Clang format's integrated into the tooling, right?
Sounds good. +1 tomorrow. Let's do that.
Let me do this. Let me look at the integration of the tooling because obviously we should do that. We should have that figured out first and foremost. So
I think MPark mentioned there are some version dependencies, and we need to make sure that everyone sync on a Clang format version.
Right. Yeah. So we should figure that out first. So then once we turn it on, everyone is actually getting the Clang format. Because I think it'd be bad to run Clang format across the whole code base and then still not have people using Clang format and have to run Clang format across the whole code base again in like a week.
Right. I think we are way over time. I think that's it for today, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Thanks everyone.
See you guys.
Thanks, Chief, for kicking this off.
No problem. Right. See you guys. Bye bye.
Yeah.